Cheers, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I am Dave Brown, and this is the New Populist. We have an interesting article today, just came out from the New York Times that is worth discussing. And this article is about who might have blown up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Now, Nord Stream was blown up on September 26th, 2022. And the immediate response from the media was, Russia did it. And everyone said that. All the neoconservatives, Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it. Now, people who are thinking are going, why would Russia blow up their own pipeline when they could simply turn off the gas and use it as a bargaining chip? And their whole thing was, well, they wouldn't do that because they want to completely sever from Europe, despite the fact that Europe is a big market for them, and they are part of Europe. But this was the article that the neoconservatives and other crazy people made, that Russia blew up this pipeline. But unfortunately for the mainstream media, there are some reporters still out there doing their job. And Seymour Hersh recently had a Substack article where he detailed how the Biden administration blew up this pipeline. And by Biden administration, we're talking about Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, Jake Sullivan, and the CIA director, although he's technically not part of the administration, but he was allegedly involved. Now, when this article came out, the mainstream media was basically silent, which is a clue. Why is the mainstream media not talking about this here in the United States and also in Germany? The problem is you can only be quiet so long before you have to muster up some sort of response, something to take the heat off the Biden administration for this allegation that they were involved in the Nord Stream 2 bombing, which is why finally today the New York Times released this article saying that they possibly found out who might have done it, according, of course, to unnamed intelligence officials. Now, before I go through this article, let's go back and remind ourselves about Operation Mockingbird. And that, of course, was the CIA program that allegedly stopped, where they would have assets within the U.S. media to push certain narratives. So with that in mind, we can look at the New York Times and all the times they had repeated fake news that came from U.S. intelligence. We have an article here. The Trump campaign accepted Russian help to win in 2016. Case closed. Russia secretly offered Afghan militants bounties to kill U.S. troops. Intelligence says. Completely fake story. Another New York Times article, Deutsche Bank staff saw suspicious activity in Trump and Kushner accounts. And this whole story about this server and Deutsche Bank, completely false. And also, when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop, they were running cover for the Biden administration. So they have a very deep and well-known history of repeating fake news fed to them by U.S. intelligence. Now, I noticed on this article, one of the authors for this article is Adam Goldman. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he is one of the gentlemen that James O'Keefe, formerly of Project Veritas, intercepted on the streets and put the microphone to his face and said, hey, you were involved in having the FBI come after me. Now, so Adam Goldman was working with the FBI, helping the FBI go after James O'Keefe. And of course, if you haven't seen the video from Project Veritas, it's a fantastic video of O'Keefe confronting him, and Goldman is being a weasel and won't answer the questions. And this guy glows in the dark. He is an asset for U.S. intelligence, or at the very least, he has been picked by U.S. intelligence to feed fake news into the U.S. mainstream. And so when you see that name Adam Goldman on the article, you know you're probably going to read fake news, especially if it involves unnamed U.S. intelligence officials. So that being said, let's start this article here. And I'm not going to read every part of it, just the parts that I thought were interesting that relate to this Nord Stream bombing. And the headline for the article is, Intelligence Suggests Pro-Ukrainian Group Sabotage Pipelines. U.S. officials say new intelligence reporting amounts to the first significant known lead about who was responsible for the attack on Nord Stream pipelines that carried natural gas from Russia to Europe. And the first thing I think is funny here is, obviously we blame Russia for so long. So now we have U.S. intelligence allegedly saying it wasn't Russia. Why would they want to take the heat off Russia? There's only one reason why, or one main reason. That being is they can't blame Russia anymore, and there's so much heat on the U.S., they got to push it elsewhere, even if it means letting Russia off the hook. So they got to get the heat off the Biden administration and U.S. intelligence and put it somewhere else. And that's what they're trying to do here. The article starts off, new intelligence reviewed by U.S. officials suggests that a pro-Ukrainian group carried out the attack on the Nord Stream pipelines last year, a step toward determining responsibility for an act of sabotage that has confounded investigators on both sides of the Atlantic for months. U.S. officials say that they have no evidence President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine or his top lieutenants were involved in the operation, or that the perpetrators were acting at the direction of any Ukrainian government official. So I thought it was interesting here that they wanted to immediately, in this first part of the article, clear Zelensky and not put the blame on the Ukrainian government. So it's a pro-Ukrainian group, but it's not the Ukrainian government. We can be sure of that. Don't blame them, because Zelensky is the golden boy, and we don't want this mess to be on Zelensky. The article continues. Ukraine and its allies have been seen by some officials as having the most logical potential motive to attack the pipelines. They have opposed the project for years, calling it a national security threat because it would allow Russia to sell gas more easily to Europe. Ukrainian government and military intelligence officials say they had no role in the attack and do not know who carried it out. And there are a few more people who also have a reason to want this pipeline to be blown up. All the officials in the United States who gleefully said, yes, it's a hunk of metal at the bottom of the ocean, Victoria Nuland. It's an opportunity, Anthony Blinken. So it's a little more than Ukraine as far as who wanted to see this pipeline being blown up. And of course, the United States is now able to sell gas to Europe, which is much more expensive than Russian gas. And the same thing with Norway. The same day that this pipeline was blown up, Norway started to sell gas to Germany. So there are other people who had motives as well. Let's continue. U.S. officials said there was much they did not know about the perpetrators and their affiliations. The review of newly collected intelligence suggests they were opponents of President Vladimir Putin of Russia, but does not specify the members of the group or who directed or paid for the operation. U.S. officials declined to disclose the nature of the intelligence, how it was obtained, or any details of the strength of the evidence it contains. They have said that there are no firm conclusions about it, leaving open the possibility that the operation might have been conducted off the books by a proxy force with connections to Ukrainian government or its security services. Okay, so here, the motive. They are against evil Vladimir Putin. So, of course, they would want to hurt him somehow and blow up this pipeline. And in the earlier paragraph, it mentioned that Zelensky wasn't involved here. But now here they're saying, basically, we don't know how good the evidence is. We're leaving it open. And we're not going to rule out that it was a proxy force with connections to the U.S. or the Ukrainian government. So it just undid what it said earlier. Basically, they have nothing, and it's they can't pin anything down. It's about as vague as it gets right here, which is a clue that it's all BS. But let's continue. Some initial U.S. and European speculation centered on possible Russian culpability, especially given its prowess in undersea operations. Though it is unclear what motivation the Kremlin would have in sabotaging the pipelines, given that they have been an important source of revenue and a means for Moscow to exert influence over Europe. One estimate put the cost of repairing the pipeline starting at about $500 million. U.S. officials say they have not found any evidence of involvement by the Russian government in the attack. And again, like I said earlier, the fact that they were so quick to blame Russia and assign all these motives to Russia early on, and now they're saying there's no evidence Russia did it. There's no clear motive that Russia did it. So why all of a sudden do they clear Russia after Russia has been the boogeyman for the last 20 years, and everything has been pinned on Russia? And now they're saying there's no motive, there's no evidence Russia did it? Why would they do that? Again, like I said earlier, to take the heat off the Biden administration, even if it means clearing Russia. That's how nervous they are that this could come back on the United States and make us look like fools and hurt our relations with our European allies. It goes on. Officials who have reviewed the intelligence said they believe the saboteurs were most likely Ukrainian or Russian nationals, or some combination of the two. U.S. officials said no American or British nationals were involved. Once again, we are clearing the United States, and we're clearing the British as well. The explosives were most likely planted with the help of experienced divers who did not appear to be working for military or intelligence services. U.S. officials who have reviewed the new intelligence said, but it is possible that the perpetrators received specialized government training in the past. Interesting they say that. They didn't work with the intelligence services or the military. They didn't appear. We can't say for sure, so we're going to say appear to leave some wiggle room here. But they may have had specialized government training in the past. That's the key for saying, or that means these are people that we trained to do something for us so that when they did it, we could cut them loose and not say that we were involved. That's what the U.S. intelligence does a lot. They train people like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, whatever. Those people do something and we say, it wasn't us, it was them. But we trained them. We gave them the equipment. Oh, it wasn't us though, it was them. So this is the game that the U.S. plays, the CIA, military. They use their cutouts, their people they bring in to do stuff that we're not supposed to be doing. The article goes on. Officials said there were still enormous gaps in what U.S. spy agencies and their European partners knew about what transpired, but officials said it might constitute the first significant lead to emerge from several closely guarded investigations, the conclusions of which could have profound implications for the coalition supporting Ukraine. Any suggestion of Ukrainian involvement, whether direct or indirect, could upset the delicate relationship between Ukraine and Germany, souring support among a German public that has swallowed high energy prices in the name of solidarity. So it's important here, they're saying, to not blame the Ukrainian government because this might piss off the German public and they're going, we're giving you weapons, we're doing all these nice things for you, and you're going to blow up this pipeline? So again, we're not just covering for the U.S. government. This article is covering for the Ukrainian government to a certain extent. Last month, the investigative journalist Seymour Hersh published an article on the newsletter platform Substack concluding that the United States carried out the operation at the direction of Mr. Biden. In making his case, Mr. Hersh cited the president's pre-invasion threat to bring an end to Nord Stream 2 and similar statements by other senior U.S. officials. U.S. officials say Mr. Biden and his top aides did not authorize a mission to destroy the Nord Stream pipelines, and they say there was no U.S. involvement. Again, we're covering for the U.S. here. And this part of the article is interesting because they're trying to show how there's plausibility here that this could have been Ukrainian saboteurs. The operations that have unnerved the United States included a strike in early August on Russia's Saki air base on the western coast of Crimea, a truck bombing in October that destroyed part of the Kerch Strait Bridge, which links Russia to Crimea, and drone strikes in December aimed at Russian military bases in Ryazan and Engels, about 300 miles beyond the Ukrainian border. But there have been other acts of sabotage and violence of more ambiguous provenance that U.S. intelligence agencies have had a harder time attributing to Ukrainian security services. One of those was a car bomb near Moscow in August that killed Daria Dugina, the daughter of a prominent Russian nationalist. So they're mentioning all these sabotage operations to give plausibility, again, to the idea that there are groups working, Ukrainian nationalists or possibly Russians who are pro-Ukrainian, who may be working outside the purview of Ukrainian intelligence and committing acts of sabotage against Russia. Again, creating the plausibility by mentioning these other sabotage acts. So today is March 7th, 2003. It's been approximately 7 months since the Nord Stream bombing. And finally, we have a piece from the mainstream media outlining who possibly could have done Nord Stream 2. Not the United States, and probably not the Ukrainian governments, just some saboteurs who have the capability to go into waters hundreds of feet down, plant these bombs, and blow it up without anybody finding out who it is. If these were indeed pro-Ukrainian saboteurs, they should be hired immediately by the CIA because they are doing a damn good job considering their limited resources. Or this article is completely BS. This article is covering for U.S. intelligence and the Biden administration to take heat off themselves because of the article from Seymour Hersh, which outlines that they in fact did it, which is probably 99.9% the truth. U.S. did it. We were happy about it. We bragged about it. And yeah, we're guilty. Not Ukrainian saboteurs that are probably just as real as the ghost of Kiev. But this is the garbage that the mainstream media spits out. And people on TV, talking heads, will be glad to repeat it because they too are probably, whether they are intentionally so or just because they're stupid, members or figures like Operation Mockingbird controlled by U.S. intelligence and spitting out whatever U.S. intelligence says uncritically, not using any of their brains. But here at the New Populace, we think for ourselves and we do not just repeat talking points from U.S. intelligence that has a massive history of lying constantly. Just look at the last 7 years. We can go through all the lies they've told, but they're too numerous and I don't have all day, so we won't. But suffice to say, they're liars and this article is BS. Well, that is it for now. If you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.